is not about morality. It is about reality. Machiavelli believed that a leader must be strong, a leader must be cunning, and sometimes a leader must be ruthless to succeed. His ideas may sound harsh, but they reveal timeless truths about our politics and human nature. Today, let's explore the first four chapters of the Prince. These four chapters lay the foundation for understanding different types of states, how they are acquired, and the challenges the rulers face. They may be centuries old, but their lessons they still apply to modern day leadership, modern day politics, and modern day governance. In this book, The Prince, chapter 1, it talks about different types of principalities and how they are acquired. Machiavelli classified principalities, which means states into two types: hereditary, which means ruled by a family for generations, and new, recently conquered or recently established. This chapter is important because it helps us understand the leadership challenges vary based on how a ruler comes to power. Then comes the chapter 2. It talks about hereditary principalities. He explains that ruling a hereditary state is easier because people are used to a single ruling family. Stability is stronger unless the ruler makes major mistakes. This teaches us that tradition and continuity they make governance smoother, but leaders should not take loyalty for granted. Then we will move to chapter 3. It is about mixed principalities. When a ruler expands into new territories, they face resistance from the people and they must work hard to secure their power. This chapter highlights the difficulty of ruling new lands and the need for strategic decision making, showing that winning power is not the same as keeping it. Then we'll move to chapter number 4. It talks about why the kingdom of Darius, conquered by Alexander, it did not rebel against his successor. Machiavelli analyzes why some kingdoms remain stable even after conquest. He compares centralized states where one ruler holds all power and feudal states where many nobles they share their power. This is crucial because it explains why some governments are easier to control than others, teaching leaders to recognize the strength and weakness of different political systems. What do we learn? These four chapters. We learn from these four chapters, they give us essential lessons in leadership and governance. The way a leader gains power, it affects their challenges and strategies. Stability is easier in traditional rule, but new rulers, they must be smart and they must be adaptable. Conquering a state is only the beginning. Keeping it is the real challenge. Understanding political structure, it helps leaders maintain control and prevent rebellion. Machiavelli's ideas, they may seem harsh, but they are brutally honest. His lessons remain relevant in politics, relevant in business, they are relevant in leadership today. As we go deeper into the Prince, the book, we will see how his advice still shapes the world around us. Let's talk about the first one, different kinds of states and how to conquer them. Machiavelli's work, The Prince, it provides a profound and timeless analysis of political power, leadership, and statecraft. His discussion of different kinds of states and how to conquer them, it offers critical insights into governance and political survival. Machiavelli classifies states into two primary categories: hereditary principalities and new principalities. Understanding their nature is essential for any ruler seeking to acquire and maintain power. Hereditary principalities, they are the easiest to govern because they rely on long-standing traditions and loyalty. Subjects are accustomed to the ruling family unless the ruler makes serious error. Unless the ruler makes serious errors, people will generally accept his authority. Stability is inherent in these states as long as the ruler does not alienate his subjects or neglect their responsibilities of governance. A historical example is the British monarchy. British monarchy, which has maintained continuing through centuries despite changes in government structures. The key to ruling a hereditary state successfully is maintaining the status quo and ensuring that traditions remain intact. In contrast, new principalities, they are more challenging to govern because they lack established legitimacy. The subjects they have been loyal to a previous ruler or they may resent the change imposed upon them. Machiavelli argues that new rulers, they must take swift and decisive actions to consolidate power. If a ruler is too talented, if a ruler is too lenient, opposition forces will regroup and challenge his authority. If he is too harsh, he risks alienating the population entirely. The key is to strike a balance. The key is to strike a balance between fear and respect. New principalities that can be acquired through personal ability, virtue, or fortune, luck, inheriting, or external support. Those gained by ability, they are more stable as the ruler has demonstrated competence and strength. Examples include Napoleon Bonaparte, who rose to power through his military genius and strategic plans. His rule was initially successful because he introduced reforms that benefited the people while maintaining strict control over opposition. On the other hand, those who gain power through fortune alone, such as rulers installed by foreign forces, they struggle to maintain control unless they take proactive measures to secure their authority. Machiavelli, he underscores the importance of eliminating threats. Eliminating threats immediately after acquiring power. A ruler must neutralize potential challenges before they can organize the system. The principle is, which means this principle is, it is evident in the rise of Julius Caesar, who gained power through a combination of military success and popular support. But he failed to eliminate all the opposition, leading to his assassination by conspirators who feared his growing influence. A more successful example is Chandragupta Maurya. Under the guidance of Chanakya, he eliminated the Nanda dynasty and established one of the most powerful empires in Indian history. By using a combination of military strength, strategic diplomacy, and administrative reforms, he secured his rule and ensured stability. One of Machiavelli's most famous principles is that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved, if he cannot be. Fear is more reliable tool for maintaining power because love is fickle. Love is fickle and dependent on circumstances. A ruler who relies solely on being loved will find himself vulnerable when his subjects' loyalty is tested. However, Machiavelli, he warns against excessive cruelty as it can provoke rebellion. The ideal ruler, he uses calculated display of strength to deter opposition by ensuring that his subjects benefit from his rule. A crucial strategy for maintaining control over a newly acquired state is to remove remnants of the previous regime. Machiavelli, he cites the example of the Romans who, after defeating Carthage in the Punic Wars, they destroyed the city entirely. Had they left Carthage intact, it could have risen against them again. This lesson applies to political takeovers as well. A new ruler must dismantle old power structures that could threaten his rule. Another method for securing a newly acquired state is to establish colonies or settlements in key areas. Colonies, they serve as outposts of control and help integrate the new territory into the ruler's domain. This strategy was employed by the British Empire, which established colonies in various regions to maintain control and suppress resistance. By creating new settlements and distributing land to loyal subjects, rulers can dilute opposition and strengthen their hold on. Machiavelli also discusses the role of mercenaries and auxiliary troops in warfare. He warns against relying on these forces as they are often disloyal and motivated by personal gain rather than loyalty to the ruler. Instead, a wise leader builds a strong native army that is committed to defending the state. This principle was evident in the success of Alexander the Great, whose army was fiercely loyal and well-trained, allowing him to conquer vast territories and maintain control. Ultimately, Machiavelli's insights into the nature of states and power, they remain relevant in modern politics. Leaders who seek to establish or maintain control, they must understand the dynamics of power. They must understand the dynamics of the power, the necessity of decisive action, and the importance of balancing fear and balancing respect. Whether in ancient Rome, whether in Napoleonic France, or contemporary geopolitics, the lessons of the prince, it continues to offer valuable guidance for those who navigating the complexities of leadership and statecraft. So, this is the first chapter from the Prince by Machiavelli. Now let's turn to the second part, hereditary monarchies. Hereditary monarchies, they are among the most stable forms of governance, primarily because people are accustomed to a single ruling family. Over time, loyalty to the ruling house is ingrained in the minds of the subjects, making transitions between rulers smoother. Machiavelli emphasizes that the continuity of tradition, it makes it easier for a hereditary prince to maintain power, provided he does not introduce sudden and drastic changes that disrupt societal order. However, this inherent stability does not mean that a hereditary ruler can afford to be complacent. A weak or incompetent monarch, he can be overthrown by ambitious individuals who capitalize on public discontent. A key lesson from Machiavelli's analysis is that a hereditary ruler, he must understand, he must respect the customs and expectations of his people. Disrupting traditions, it can lead to widespread resistance. A ruler who aligns with established norms, he will face minimal opposition. Whereas one who imposes radical challenges or radical changes, he risks alienating the very people who sustain his rule. A compelling historical example is Queen Elizabeth II, who ruled Britain for over 70 years. Her ability to balance tradition with gradual modernization, it ensured the continued relevance of the British monarchy in an era of rapid social and political transformation. She never abandoned the core principles. That defined the monarchy, but adapted to changing times by embracing media engagement and humanitarian causes strengthening public support for the institution. Conversely, the downfall of John Nicholas II of Russia, it exemplifies the dangers of failing to address societal grievances. John Nicholas II, he attempted resolutely to autocratic rule while ignoring the suffering of his people. Economic hardships, military failures in World War I, and widespread dissatisfaction, they all culminated in the Russian Revolution of 1917, leading to the fall of the Romanov dynasty. It illustrates Machiavelli's warning that a hereditary ruler who does not command respect and fails to secure public loyalty is vulnerable to overthrow. Machiavelli, he also cautioned. Machiavelli also cautions that cruelty and injustice, it can provoke rebellion, while he advocates for a prince to be feared rather than loved. He warns against excessive cruelty that breeds hatred. Excessive cruelty that breeds hatred. A ruler who instills fear to fail governance and decisive actions, they will be respected, but one who is despotic and indifferent to the needs of his people, it invites revolt. A striking example is the fate of King Louis XVI of France. His failures to address the economic crisis, his indecisiveness, and his detachment from the struggles of his own people, it led to the French Revolution. When the people saw the monarchy as an obstacle to their well-being rather than as a protector of stability, they turned against it. People turned against it, culminating in the execution of the king and the abolition of the monarch. This case underscores Machiavelli's principle that a ruler must be politically astute and responsive to societal needs to avoid destruction. Another historical case that reinforces Machiavelli's warnings is the rule of Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb in India. If you see, unlike his predecessors such as Akbar and Shah Jahan, who fostered religious tolerance and cultural integration, Aurangzeb's policies, they alienated large sections of society. His imposition of strict Islamic laws, heavy taxation on non-Muslims, and continuous military campaigns, they all drained the empire's resources and they fueled resentment among his people. The unrest and fragmentation that followed his reign led to the gradual decline of the Mughal Empire. This demonstrates Machiavelli's insight that a ruler who disrupts harmony within his realm through divisive policies or through divisive politics, it paves the way for internal collapse. Machiavelli's analysis of hereditary monarchies, it also highlights the importance of a ruler's adaptability. While tradition provides a foundation for stability, rigid attachment to outdated customs, it can render a ruler ineffective in changing times. A wise prince recognizes when to uphold tradition and when to introduce reforms that strengthen his rule without alienating his subjects. Consider the case of Emperor Meiji of Japan. When faced with the threat of Western domination, he initiated the Meiji Restoration, a series of political, economic and social reforms that transformed Japan into a modern industrialized nation. By carefully blending traditional values with modernization, he preserved monarchy while positioning Japan as a global power. His success exemplifies Machiavelli's teaching that adaptability is key to maintaining power in a rapidly evolving world. On the other hand, the downfall of Qing dynasty in China, it highlights the dangers of resisting necessary reforms. The conservative rulers of the late Qing era, They failed to modernize their military. They failed to modernize their economy. They failed to modernize their governance and structures, leaving China vulnerable to foreign invasions and internal rebellion. The inability to adapt, it led to the fall of the dynasty in 1912, reinforcing Machiavelli's principle that a hereditary ruler, they must recognize when change is necessary to preserve his authority. Machiavelli also advises that hereditary rulers, they should maintain a strong military presence to deter potential challenges. A ruler who neglects military preparedness risks being overthrown by internal conspiracies or external aggressors. This lesson is evident in the case of the Ottoman Empire. The early Ottoman Sultans, they maintained a powerful military to the Janissary corps, which ensured stability and expansion. However, as latter rulers, they grew complacent and neglected military innovation. The empire declined. The Ottoman Empire declined, making it susceptible to external threats and internal revolts. Moreover, Machiavelli stresses that hereditary rulers, they should carefully manage their relationship with the nobility and common people. If a ruler alienates the nobility, he risks conspiracies and power struggles. If he disregards the needs of the common people, he faces mass uprising. Striking the right balance is crucial for a stable reign. For instance, the British monarchy, it has maintained its relevance by forging a strong connection with both the aristocracy and the public. Through symbolic acts of service, through symbolic acts of diplomacy and engagement, the monarchy has managed to retain popular support while navigating political transition. This approach aligns with the Machiavelli's view that a wise hereditary ruler, they nurtures alliances that reinforces their authority. In contrast, the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy in Spain after Napoleon's invasion in the early 19th century, it demonstrated the perils of alienating both nobility and common people. King Ferdinand VII's his erratic policies and disregard for national stability, it led to a widespread discontent, weakening the monarchy's grip on power. Machiavelli's enhanced of hereditary monarchies, it provides timeless lessons for rulers and political leaders. A hereditary prince, they must balance tradition with adaptability. They must maintain public support. They must exercise controlled authority. They must ensure military strength. Now let's turn to topic number 3, mixed monarchies, the challenges of ruling conquered lands. In the Prince, Niccolo Machiavelli provides a profound insight into the art of ruling new territories, specifically discussing what he terms mixed monarchies. These arise when a ruler already in power over one region, he extends his dominion over another. Unlike hereditary principalities, where the ruler benefits from established legitimacy and tradition, mixed monarchies, they pose distinct challenges. The newly annexed population, they often resist foreign rule, driven by loyalty to their previous government, cultural differences, or fear of oppression. Without strategic governance, rebellion is inevitable. To consolidate power in a mixed monarchy, Machiavelli recommends several key strategies. Residing in the new territory, eliminating the old ruling class, maintaining the goodwill of the people, rewarding loyalty, and dealing decisively with opposition. These insights, they remain relevant across history, from the campaigns of Alexander the Great to the British rule in India. The importance of residing in the new territory. Let's talk about it. Machiavelli here asserts that the ruler should reside in the newly conquered land to ensure stability and direct oversight. When the sovereign is physically present, he can swiftly address disputes, suppress uprising, and demonstrate authority. A distant ruler, he relies on governors who may become corrupt, misinterpret policies, or lack the necessary influence to enforce laws effectively. A ruler's absence, it can also embolden rebels who see an opportunity to challenge foreign control. Alexander the Great served as a classic example of Machiavellian wisdom. He did not merely conquer lands, he integrated himself into their cultures. After taking control of Persia, he adopted Persian customs, dressed in Persian attire, appointed local administrators, and even married Roxana, a Persian princess. By doing so, he signaled to the Persian elite that he was not a mere conqueror, but a legitimate ruler who respected their tradition. His direct involvement in governance ensured stability in an otherwise vast, diverse empire. Conversely, European colonial powers, particularly Britain and India, they failed to integrate themselves into local traditions. British rulers, they lived in exclusive enclaves separated from the Indian population. They imposed a foreign legal and administrative system without adaptation to local norms, leading to widespread resentment and eventual independent movements. So, then Machiavelli advised that a conqueror must decisively remove the former ruling elite. The previous rulers, they have the most incentive to resist and reclaim power. As long as they exist, they serve as focal points for rebellion. The Ottoman Empire effectively managed vast diverse territories by eliminating the ruling elite and co-opting local institutions. Constantinople in 1453, Sultan Mehmed II, he allowed Greek Orthodox patriarchs to govern their own people under Ottoman supervision. This system, known as the millet system, it reduced resistance while maintaining imperial control. Contrast this with Napoleon's conquest in Europe, where he often deposed monarchs but left them alive or exiled. Many of these deposed rulers, such as the Bourbons in France and the Habsburgs in Spain, they became rallying points for counter-revolution. His failure to completely dismantle world ruling structures, it contributed to the eventual collapse of his empire. Machiavelli emphasizes that after securing power, a ruler must win the loyalty of his new subjects. The common people, unlike the elite, they are often more concerned with the stability and prosperity than with who govern them. A wise ruler must demonstrate justice, economic growth, and strong leadership to secure their support. The Roman Empire mastered the art of ruling conquered territories by offering partial citizenship, military protection, and infrastructure improvements. Rome did not simply conquer. It assimilated by allowing local elites to become Roman citizens and rewarding loyalty with privileges. Rome ensured long-term stability. Compare this to British rule in India, where Indians were treated as second-class citizens under exploitative policy. The lack of social integration, it fueled resentment culminating in the Indian independence movement. So, Machiavelli underscores the importance of rewarding allies and punishing treason immediately. A ruler, he must establish clear consequences for betrayal while generously rewarding those who support him. Hesitation or inconsistency, it signals weakness and it invites further rebellion. Joseph Stalin, though a tough dictator, he applied Machiavelli's principles effectively. He eliminated rivals like Trotsky and Bukharin without hesitation. Those who showed unwavering loyalty, they were rewarded. They were rewarded with high positions and they were rewarded with privilege. His brutal methods, they ensured that opposition was crushed before it could gain momentum. Contrast this with the British handling of Indian princely states. While some local rulers, they were granted autonomy, the British failed to build long-term loyalty. Many Indian rulers, they resented British interference, leading to alliances against colonial rule. The lack of absolute loyalty eventually weakened the British laws in India. Though written in the Renaissance era, Machiavelli's principles, they still apply to modern governments. Leaders who take control of new political territories, whether through elections, mergers, or economic expansions, they must understand. They must understand the nuance of ruling over diverse population. The lessons from the reigns are evident in various political strategies. If we take China's approach to Hong Kong, when Britain returned Hong Kong to China in 1997, China promised a one country, two systems policy, allowing some autonomy while gradually tightening its control. This resembles the Ottoman model of allowing limited local governance while ensuring ultimate authority. It remains with the central power. Russia's annexation of Crimea, Vladimir Putin, his strategy, it mirrors Machiavelli's. He eliminated pro-Ukrainian leadership, installed loyalists, and used economic incentives to win local support by swiftly suppressing the same. US intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan. Unlike Rome, the US failed to integrate or win the loyalty of local population. It removed ruling elites but did not effectively establish stable governance, leading to prolonged resistance. Let's talk about the art of conquering and governance. Machiavelli's insights on mixed monarchies, it remains timeless, ruling a newly acquired territory. It is not merely about a military conquest. It requires political wisdom, strategic alliances, and cultural integration. Now let's turn to chapter number 4. Why the kingdom of Darius did not rebel against Alexander's successor. A deep political analysis. Let's check. Niccolo Machiavelli, in the book Prince, it delves into the nature of power, governance, and the sustainability of rule, offering timeless wisdom for political leaders, strategists, and anyone seeking to understand the mechanics of control. In chapter number 4, he examines why the Persian Empire under King Darius III did not rebel against Alexander the Great's successors, contrasting it with other forms of governance that are more susceptible to instability. This chapter presents profound lessons on centralized versus decentralized rule, the role of noble factions, and the practical applications of these insights in historical and modern context. Let's check. power versus decentralized rule. Machiavelli makes a fundamental distinction between two types of states: centralized monarchies and feudal aristocracy. In a centralized monarchy, power is concentrated in the hands of a single ruler with an established bureaucratic system. In contrast, a feudal aristocracy, it consists of a ruler monarch who must share authority with powerful noble families who have their own regional basis of power. The Persian Empire under Darius III, it represented the former type, a highly centralized structure in which the king wielded absolute power and all officials they derived their authority directly from him. When Alexander the Great conquered Persia, he merely replaced the king while keeping the administrative structures intact. This ensured a smooth transition of power and minimized rebellion because the people were accustomed to obeying a single authority. In contrast, feudal kingdoms such as France, they were structured differently. Power was dispersed. Power was dispersed among various nobles, each with their own loyalties and ambitions. Such systems are easier to conquer because nobles often have personal grievances against the ruling king and they may welcome an invader. However, they are far harder to control because these same nobles, they constantly seek to regain their power, leading to perpetual instability and rebellion. Machiavelli's insights, they can be seen throughout history. One striking modern example is the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Under Saddam Hussein, Iraq was a highly centralized state, similar to the Persian Empire. When the United States removed Saddam Hussein, it also dismantled the governing structure, leading to chaos, sectarian conflict, and prolonged instability. This was a classic case of failing to recognize the nature of power structures. Unlike Persia, where the system remained intact after a leadership change, Iraq was left without a functioning authority. Conversely, when China transitioned from Mao Zedong to Deng Xiaoping, the Communist Party maintained control, ensuring stability. Despite a shift in leadership and economic policy, the centralized governance structures they remained intact, preventing internal collapse. This mirrors the Persian case under Alexander's successor, where the administrative machinery of the empire it continued to function efficiently despite a change in rulers. Another example is Japan after World War II. The United States allowed Emperor Hirohito to remain as a symbolic figure, ensuring that the Japanese people retained a sense of continuity. Although Japan underwent democratic reforms, the core governance structure, it was carefully modified rather than destroyed, allowing for a stable transition. Lessons learned from the Mauryan Empire and other historical cases. Indian Mauryan Empire under Emperor Ashoka, it provides another instructive example. Ashoka, he centralized government to a well-organized bureaucracy and a network of provincial governance. Even after his death, the administrative framework he established, it helped to maintain stability for years. However, once the empire fragmented and power became decentralized among regional rulers, instability and invasions followed. The lesson aligns with Machiavelli's argument. Centralized states, they endure better under new leadership than decentralized ones. Similar lessons can be drawn from the Roman Empire. Under emperors such as Augustus and Trajan, Roman functioned as a centralized state with a strong bureaucratic system. However, during the latter period of the empire, when military generals and regional governors they gained more autonomy, civil wars, and political instability, they became rampant, ultimately leading to Rome's decline. Machiavelli's tragic recommendations for leaders. Machiavelli advises rulers to carefully assess the structure of the states they conquer. If a state has a centralized system, maintaining control is relatively straightforward. Replace the ruler, but preserve the administrative apparatus. If the state has independent factions or noble families, then new ruler must take additional measures. Eliminate or subjugate rival nobles. A wise ruler must ensure that no powerful noble families remain to challenge authority. Alexander succeeded in Persia because there were no strong local rulers who could resist his success. In contrast, Napoleon struggled in Spain because regional nobles and guerrilla fighters they continuously opposed his rule. Win the loyalty of the people. In a decentralized state, the masses often suffer under the competing interests of local lords. A conqueror who can provide stability and fair governance, he can earn popular support, making it easier to maintain power. So, maintain key institutions. Rather than dismantling governance structures, an intelligent ruler, he preserves and co-opts them. The British, they successfully ruled India. Britishers successfully ruled India for nearly 2 centuries by working through existing local princely states and bureaucratic institutions rather than entirely replacing them. Use both force and diplomacy. Machiavelli, he advises, he asserts that power must be exercised with a balance of cunning and speed. A ruler must not rely solely on military conquest, but they must also use diplomacy, they must also use propaganda and calculated generosity to win power. In the end, the timeless relevance of Machiavelli's insight from the book of Prince. Machiavelli's lessons, they remain profoundly relevant today, not just for political leaders, but for corporate executives, military strategists, and even individuals navigating competitive environments. Machiavelli's teachings, they emphasize that leadership is not about morality, but about effectiveness. A successful leader must adapt to changing political reality, recognize the fundamental structure of the power they seek to control, act decisively to consolidate authority and eliminate threats, balance force with strategy to maintain long-term stability. From Julius Caesar to Napoleon, from Alexander the Great to Chandragupta Maurya, history proves that those who master power, they succeed. While those who fail to understand the power, they are inevitably overthrown. Political stability depends on understanding the nature of governance, the expectations of the ruled, and the necessity of strong leadership. Machiavelli ultimately poses a question to every leader. Will you adapt? Will you strategize? Will you rule wisely? Or will you make the mistakes of the fallen king and emperors of history? The choice, as always, the choice belongs to those who dare to wield power. Thank you. Let's talk about the 5th chapter, strategies for governing newly acquired states. Niccolo Machiavelli in The Prince, he provides a pragmatic and often ruthless approach to governance, particularly when dealing with the newly acquired territories. In chapter number 5, he examines the difficulties rulers face when attempting to govern states that were previously free. His insights are timeless. They offer lessons that apply not only to political conquest but also to modern governance, modern corporate restructuring, and even global diplomacy. The three strategies for control. Machiavelli, he outlines three primary methods for maintaining control over newly acquired states. One is destruction, second one is occupation, and third one is autonomy with the tribute. Destruction is completely dismantling existing political, social, and military institutions to remove any possibility of rebellion. While second one, occupation, it is establishing a permanent presence through direct rule, enforcing authority through military and administrative control. And coming to third one, autonomy with tribute, allowing the states to maintain its laws and traditions while imposing taxes and installing a loyal oligarchy to rule the conqueror's interests. Each strategy has its own merits and drawbacks, but Machiavelli strongly argues that destruction is often the most reliable approach. By eliminating former ruling classes, traditions, and institutions, the conqueror, he ensures that there is no foundation upon which rebellion can be built. Let's see the logic of destruction. It is the most secure path to power. Machiavelli's preference for destruction, it stems from his understanding of human nature. People who have tasted freedom, they will never forget it, and their desire to reclaim it, it can lead to endless cycles of rebellion and resistance. Endless cycles of rebellion and resistance. A ruler who merely imposes new laws while allowing old institutions to persist, he may find himself constantly dealing with uprising. So, let's see Machiavelli's destruction as a strategy. Let's explore it. Lessons from Carthage. Lessons from Carthage to modern warfare. Niccolo Machiavelli, the master strategist of power, he believed that destruction is sometimes the most secure path to dominance. He argued that a ruler who merely imposes new laws without completely erasing old institutions, he risks endless rebellions. This principle finds its most striking historical example in the destruction of Carthage. Let's see the Machiavelli's destruction as a strategy. Lessons from Carthage. Lessons from Carthage to modern warfare. Niccolo Machiavelli, the master strategist of power, he believed that destruction is sometimes the most secure path to dominance. He argued that a ruler who merely imposes new laws without completely erasing old institutions, he risks endless rebellions. These principles finds its most striking historical example in the destruction of Carthage by Rome in 146 BC. It echoes throughout history in events like firebombing of Dresden and the nuclear attack on Hiroshima in World War II, the Mongol invasions of the 13th century, and genocides like those in Armenia in 1915 and Rwanda in 1994. All these examples could show us how total destruction has been used as a means of securing power, eliminating threats, and reshaping history. Carthage is the model of total annihilation. The city of Carthage, once a thriving superpower which posed a formidable challenge to Rome. After three brutal Punic wars, Rome decided that Carthage must not only be defeated but erased from existence. In 146 BC, Roman forces breached the city's walls. They massacred over 150,000 people, enslaved 50,000 survivors, burned the city for 17 days, and allegedly they salted the land to prevent future habitation. A defeated enemy that retains its institutions, culture, and it will resist. It can always rise again. By obliterating Carthage, Rome secured its supremacy for centuries. Fast forward to the 20th century, and Machiavelli's logic of destruction it resurfaces in the devastation of Dresden and Hiroshima. In February 1945, Allied forces firebombed Dresden, a cultural hub of Germany. It killed between 25,000 to 35,000 civilians. It reduced the city to ashes. The justification? To break the enemy's spirit and hasten the end of World War II. Even more shocking was the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The United States seeking to force Japan's unconditional surrender. The US dropped nuclear bombs, instantly killing over 140,000 in Hiroshima and 70,000 civilians in Nagasaki. With tens of thousands, they are suffering from radiation exposure. The logic was clear: total destruction. It would end the war and prevent future resistance. Moreover, the forces created a fear of total destruction. Not total destruction, but a fear of total destruction in Japan, using psychological warfare to break the nation's resolve. The United States hurled 2 nuclear bombs to prove they were ready to go for more, reinforcing the notion that further resistance would lead to absolute annihilation of Japan. Whether justified or not, these bombings they serve as modern echoes of Carthage's fate. If Carthage, its destruction was strategic, the Mongols' annihilation of Baghdad in 1258, it was an example of sheer terror as a political tool. The Mongols, led by Hulagu Khan, razed Baghdad in the center of Islamic civilization, killing around 1 million people in a single week. The great libraries of Baghdad, including the House of Wisdom, they were burned, and the Tigris River, it ran black with the ink from destroyed manuscripts. Why such brutality? Because it sent a message. This brutality sent a message: surrender or face complete annihilation. While Carthage, Hiroshima, and Baghdad, they were acts of military destruction. The Armenian genocide of 1915 and the Rwanda genocide of 1994, it shows how destruction has been used against the entire population. In 1915, the Ottoman Empire, it systematically exterminated 1.5 million Armenians, fearing their loyalty to Russia and their cultural identity. In 1994, Hutu extremists in Rwanda, they massacred 800,000 Hutus in 100 days, seeking to erase their existence from the country. Both the genocides, they reflect Machiavelli's warning. When rulers see a group as a permanent threat, they may attempt total destruction rather than risk rebellion. Let's talk about the Machiavellian's dilemma about this destruction. Can destruction ever be justified? History shows that destruction can secure power, but it also raises ethical questions. Rome eliminated Carthage and ruled the Mediterranean, but was it necessary? The atomic bomb, it ended Second World War. But at what moral cost? The Mongols, they used terror to expand their empire. But did they kill more than necessary? The same dilemma it haunts us today. Machiavelli might argue that destruction works when it is total, leaving no room for revenge or resistance. However, history also teaches that destruction can breed future conflicts. Hiroshima led to the nuclear arms race. Baghdad's fall, it weakened Islamic civilization for centuries. And the Armenian and Rwandan genocide, they left scars that remain even for today. Destruction as a strategy has shaped world history from Carthage to modern wars. Machiavelli's principle of total destruction, it has been applied time and again, proving its effectiveness in securing power. But we must think that it is a path to lasting peace. Is it a path to lasting peace or just a cycle of endless violence? As we look at history, we must ask, is true power built on destruction or on rebuilding what was once torn down? Let peace be prevailed instead of this total destruction. Modern democracies, unlike the empires of the past, they may not engage in large-scale destruction, but the principle, they remain visible in business and politics in present scenario. Let's see the next approach, occupation. Second approach. It is a costly but viable alternative. When a ruler takes over new land, they must find a way to stand in power. Destroying everything is one option, but it is extreme. The next best approach is occupation. By placing a ruler or a military force within the conquered land, the ruler can enforce control and prevent rebellion. This strategy works, but it comes with a heavy price. It demands constant effort. It demands constant resources. It demands constant attention. It is like holding a wild animal on a leash. You must stay alert at all times or it will break free. If we take the example, the British, they ruled India from 1757 to 1947 using this method. They came as traders but soon turned into rulers. They placed their military, built a strong administration and made sure they controlled every important decision. But they made a mistake. They did not destroy local traditions, nor did they fully absorb into Indian society, into their own systems. They left Indian kings in power in some places. They allowed local customs to survive, and they thought they could rule forever by balancing control with cooperation. But that balance was unstable. When people still hold on to their identity, they do not forget who they are. They wait, they resist, they rise. That is exactly what happened in India. The British faced revolts, protests, and movements. The more they tried to tighten their grip on India, the more Indians fought back. The 1857 revolt, it shook their rule, but they suppressed it with force. However, they could not stop the fire of freedom. The Indian National Congress, their movements led by leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, and the demand for self-rule, it kept growing stronger. By the early 20th century, occupation became too costly for the British. It drained their economy, it weakened their power, and it made them question if they could hold on any longer. In the end, they had to leave India. Machiavelli understood this long before it happened. He warned that if a ruler does not completely destroy or fully absorb a conquered state, rebellion is inevitable. He knew that partial control is dangerous because it gives hope to the people who want their freedom. The British gave Indians enough space to remember who they were. And that memory led to independence. Occupation is like trying to control a river by building a dam. You may hold the water for a while, but if you do not manage it properly, it will break through with unstoppable force. The British did not see the cracks forming in their rule. They thought they were unshakable, but history had other plans. The lesson is clear. If you wish to rule over people, you must either erase their past completely or become one of them. Everything in between, it will eventually fail because the human spirit does not surrender easily. After World War II, the US chose occupation of Japan rather than destruction. By maintaining control through military governance and political restructuring, the US transformed Japan into a stable democracy while preventing resurgence of militarism. If you take modern corporates, when a company acquires another, the new leadership often installs executives to enforce new policies while retaining much of the workforce. This allows for gradual integration rather than outright destruction. Autonomy with the tribute, it is a risky balancing act. Machiavelli's third strategy is to allow a state to retain its laws while installing a loyal governing body and imposing taxes. This approach is effective when dealing with a region that has strong cultural identities but lack military strength to resist. Historical and modern examples of this approach would be the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman empires, it ruled vast territories through a system of local governance. As long as regions paid tribute and remained loyal, they could maintain their laws and traditions. This method reduced administrative burdens but carried the risk of rebellion. And coming to the British Commonwealth, many former British colonies, they retain autonomy while recognizing the British monarchy as a ceremonial figure. This arrangement, it maintains cultural ties without direct control. Franchise business model. In the corporate world, the companies like McDonald's, they allow franchises to operate independently while paying royalty. The central corporation, it benefits financially without managing day-to-day operations. Now, let's consider why some leaders fail. Why some leaders fail to secure their power. Machiavelli warns that rulers who hesitate or who compromise too much, they risk failure. He cites examples of leaders who fail to consolidate power because they underestimated the resilience of world structures. The fall of the Weimar Republic in 1933. The democratic government of Germany, it failed to eliminate remnants of imperial influence, allowing the Nazis to rise. If you see the Arab Spring in 2010s, many regimes, they collapsed because leaders neither reformed nor eliminated opposition racially. Partial measures, they often led to prolonged instability. Machiavelli's insights, they remain relevant in today's world, whether in politics, business, or social movements. Leaders who acquire power, they must decide whether to destroy, whether to occupy, or whether to allow autonomy with tribute. While destruction provides security, it requires immense brutality. Occupation ensures control, but is costly and it is difficult. Now let's turn to chapter number 6. The role of personal virtue in leadership. Niccolo Machiavelli, in chapter number 6 of the Prince, he presents a profound argument regarding the role of personal virtue in leadership. He distinguished leaders who rise to power through their own abilities from those who achieve it through fortune or external factor. Machiavelli's discussion, it revolves around the necessity of vision, decisive action, and the implementation of innovative reforms. His insights remain relevant even today, influencing political leaders, influencing business movers, and influencing strategies. Machiavelli cites four significant historical figures: Moses, Cyrus, Romulus, and Theseus, exemplary leaders who carved their destinies through their own prowess. Each of these individuals, rather than inheriting power, they demonstrated extraordinary leadership by recognizing and seizing opportunities. If we take the example of Moses, Moses, a biblical figure who led the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses is often associated with divine intervention. However, Machiavelli emphasizes his personal virtues, particularly his ability to command authority, it establish laws, and consolidate power. Moses succeeded not merely because of divine support, but because of his capacity to inspire obedience and create a lasting order. Then we'll see the second person in the list, Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Empire. Cyrus demonstrated immense strategic prowess. He united various tribes and conquered vast territories, not through chance, but by implementing pragmatic policies and fostering loyalty among his subjects. His ability to blend diplomacy with military strength, it made him a revered ruler. Then we have Romulus. Romulus, the legendary founder of Rome. Romulus, he exemplified necessity of bold and sometimes ruthless action in state building by eliminating his own brother and asserting dominance. Romulus ensured that survival and strength of Rome, laying the foundation for one of history's greatest empires. Then Theseus, known for his exploits in Greek mythology, Theseus represents the power of ingenuity. He recognized Athens, centralizing authority and creating stability in a fragmented society. His leadership, it underscores the importance of reforming existing structures to maintain control. These leaders shared three fundamental traits. Foresight, first one. Foresight, second one, decisiveness, and third one, adaptability. They did not passively wait for fortune to favor them. Instead, they actively shaped their destinies through virtue. The core tenets of the Machiavellian leadership. The number one quality, visionary leadership, recognizing and seizing opportunity. Machiavelli argues that successful rulers, they possess an acute ability to recognize opportunities that others overlook. Leadership is not about waiting for the right moment, but it is about creating the right moment. This requires a deep understanding of human nature. It requires political dynamics, and it requires the deep understanding of socio-economic landscape. For instance, Alexander the Great, he demonstrated an unparalleled capacity to perceive and exploit the opportunity. He identified weaknesses in enemy formations. He devised innovative military strategies, and he forged alliances to consolidate power. His ability to think ahead, it gave him a significant advantage over his adversary. Similarly, in the modern business world, if you see Steve Jobs, he epitomized visionary leadership. He foresaw the potential of personal computing and revolutionized the industry by introducing groundbreaking products like the iPhone and Mac. His success. His success was not a result of luck, but of his capacity to recognize future trends and act decisively. Let's talk about the next step. Decisive action. Swift and bold measures we talk about. Machiavelli, he asserts that hesitation can be fatal in leadership. A leader must act boldly and swiftly to achieve objectives, even if such actions invite opposition. In decisiveness, it creates opportunities for rivals to exploit weakness. Julius Caesar, he exemplifies this principle. He is crossing of the Rubicon in 49 BC. It was a calculated risk that led to his ultimate control of Rome. Rather than hesitating, he seized the moment, demonstrating his resolve and political acumen. Franklin D. Roosevelt, his response to the Great Depression, it highlights his decisive leadership. His implementation of the New Deal, despite facing resistance, it transformed the American economy. Leaders who act with conviction, they inspire confidence and command. Go ahead. Now let's check the number 3, innovative reforms, restructuring for stability. A leader cannot merely inherit or conquer power. They must reform societal structures to solidify their rule. Machiavelli stresses that newly acquired territories, they must undergo systematic changes to align with the ruler's vision. Napoleon Bonaparte exemplified this principle. After rising to power, he introduced the Napoleonic Code, revolutionizing legal systems across Europe. Napoleon's reforms, though sometimes authoritarian, but his reforms created order and efficiency. A corporate parallel we can see in Elon Musk, whose radical innovations in electric vehicles and space exploration, it disrupted industries. By challenging conventional norms and pushing for technological advancements, Elon Musk reshaped market dynamics. Then we'll talk about the role of fortune versus personal capability. The role of fortune versus personal capability. Machiavelli acknowledges that fortune it plays a role in leadership, but insists that sustained success depends on personal ability. He uses the metaphor of fortune as a racing river that, while unpredictable, racing river is unpredictable, but it can be controlled through preparation and through strategic action. For example, Winston Churchill's leadership during the World War II, it was a blend of fortune and blend of capability. While external circumstances necessitated strong leadership, Churchill's resilience, work skills, and strategic decisions, they ultimately determined the course of history. Similarly, Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent movement, it succeeded not because of mere luck, but because of his unwavering determination and tactical brilliance. Gandhi's ability to mobilize millions, challenge colonial rule, and adapt to changing circumstances, it underscores Machiavelli's principles that true leaders, they shape their fate. True leaders shape their fate. Modern implications of Machiavellian's leadership. Machiavelli's insights, they are applicable beyond politics. They belong to business, we can see in sports, and we can see in social movements. Leaders who exhibit vision, decisiveness, and adaptability, they achieve long-term success. And we see the business leadership. Jeff Bezos, he transformed e-commerce through relentless innovation. His willingness to take risks, invest in technology, and expand Amazon's reach, it exemplified Machiavellian's leadership. If we see sports leadership, Michael Jordan, his dominance in basketball, it was not just talent, but unyielding work ethic, strategic mindset, and competitive spirit. His leadership inspired his teammates and set new standards for excellence. Niccolo Machiavelli, in chapter number 7 of The Prince, he provides an incisive analysis of how rulers gain and sustain power, particularly when that power is acquired through fortune or external support. He uses the case of Cesare Borgia as a prime example of both the advantages and pitfalls of such a rise. Through this case study, Machiavelli lays out key principles that remain crucial for any leaders, whether in politics, business, or any other domain, who seeks to maintain authority and avoid downfall. Let's see. The fragility of power. The fragility of power bestowed by others. Let's talk about this. One of Machiavelli's core assertion is that power attained through fortune or external influence is inherently unstable unless the individual possessing it takes swift and decisive action to secure it independently. Cesare Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander VI, he rose to power largely due to his father's influence. However, Borgia understood that such a foundation was precarious. He recognized that his survival and success depended not on his father's continued patronage, but on his own ability to consolidate and maintain power. So let's see lesson number 1. Strategic alliance and their double-edged nature. Strategic alliance can be a powerful tool in gaining influence. However, Machiavelli warns that leaders must be wary of over-dependence on any single ally. Borgia's initial strength came from his father's position. It came from his father's position, but he actively worked to expand his own power base through calculated relationships and military campaigns. He used mercenaries, manipulated political factions, and sought to neutralize any rival forces. However, once his father died, the fragility of his position it became apparent, and his enemies they swiftly moved against him. It illustrates that while alliances can provide an initial boost, long-term security comes from creating an independent foundation. Consider modern day politics. If you see, many leaders rise to power through endorsements, political backing, or corporate support. However, those who fail to establish their own credibility and personal influence, that they often fall quickly once their external patrons they withdraw their support. Historical examples they include figures like Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev, whose authority diminished when he could no longer rely on the Communist Party support, or CEOs who lose favor with board members and they are simply removed despite their past. Let's see the lesson number 2. Adaptability. A leader's most crucial skill, adaptability. Machiavelli underscores the importance of adaptability in leadership. He describes how Borgia, recognizing the volatility of his position, he attempted to shift strategies as circumstances changed. When he realized that reliance on mercenaries it was vulnerable, he replaced them with his own royal force. He also sought to gain favor with the local population by appeasing and appearing as a just and a capable ruler. The broader lesson here is that leaders must constantly assess their environment and pivot when necessary. The political landscape is ever changing, and those who rigidly adhere to outdated methods, they often find themselves outmanned. This principle is evident in corporate strategy as well. Business leaders who fail to adapt to market shifts, technological advancements, and consumer behavior, it changes often see their companies decline. For example, blockbuster video, once a dominant force in the home entertainment industry. It failed. It failed to adapt to the digital streaming revolution, allowing Netflix to overtake. Similarly, in politics, leaders who fail to adjust their rhetoric or policies in response to shifting public sentiment often lose elections. Let's see the lesson number 3. Decisive, ruthless. Decisive, ruthless. The necessity of hard choice. Let's talk about it. Machiavelli's philosophy is often associated with a cold pragmatism, and this chapter provides a clear justification for that reputation. He argues that leaders must be willing to make difficult and even ruthless decisions when necessary. In the case of Borgia demonstrated this through his treatment of potential threats. He eliminated rivals. Borgia eliminated rivals. He controlled rebellious factions, and he took preemptive measures against those who might oppose him. While this approach may seem harsh, Machiavelli is finding that indecisiveness and leniency, it can be more dangerous in the long run. Weak leaders who hesitate to take action, they often invite chaos. They allow their enemies to regroup and strike back. In contrast, leaders who swiftly, decisively remove threats, they can establish stability. They can command respect. Consider Abraham Lincoln's decision during the American Civil War. While known for his moral leadership, Lincoln did not hesitate to suspend habeas corpus and take controversial military action to preserve the Union. Similarly, in business, Steve Jobs, he was known for making tough decisions, cutting projects, firing employees who underperformed, and fiercely controlling Apple's vision to ensure the company's success. Then let's talk about the modern implications of Machiavelli's lessons. Modern implications. Lessons for today's leaders. Machiavelli's insights, they remain relevant in modern times, not just in politics, but also in corporate and personal leadership. Power is rarely stable unless actively reinforced. Leaders must build independent credibility and not rely solely on external support. They must adapt to shifting circumstances to stay ahead of competitors. They must make hard decisions when necessary to secure their position. Those who rise through connections, endorsements, or luck, but fail to reinforce their authority often, they meet a swift downfall. This principle is evident in the case of any politicians, business executives, and even celebrities who fail to transition from being supported figures to independent forces. Machiavelli's discussion of Borgia, it serves as both a cautionary tale and a guide for effective leadership. Fortune may open doors, but only skill and strategy it can keep them open. Leaders must recognize that while external support can be an advantage, true power comes from personal capability and foresight. Those who understand this balance, they will be best positioned to navigate the complexities of power, whether in governance, whether in business, or any sphere of influence. In this way, the lesson from the prince, it remains timeless. It remains timeless. Never rely entirely on the power given to you by others. Cultivate your own power. Secure your own position and always be prepared to act decisively when the moment demands it. Now, let's turn to chapter number 8. In this session, this chapter is going to Let's on to chapter number 8, the ethics and the efficacy of cruelty in leadership. Machiavelli is the prince. It remains one of the most controversial and enduring treatises on power and leadership. The chapter 8, it explores the ethical and practical dimensions of cruelty in leadership. It offers profound insights into how rulers can utilize force effectively while maintaining stability and legitimacy. Chapter 8, it explores the ethical and practical dimensions of cruelty in leadership. It offers profound insights into how rulers can utilize force effectively while maintaining stability and legitimacy. Here you can see the dual nature of cruelty. Machiavelli makes a critical distinction between two types of cruelty: well-utilized cruelty. Well-utilized cruelty. This involves acts of harshness that are executed swiftly, decisively, and out of necessity. Such cruelty is limited to a specific period and is designed to establish order. It eliminates immediate threats. It paves the way for long-term stability. Once the leader has secured power, further cruelty is unnecessary, and policies should swift toward governance and public welfare. Then, abused cruelty. This refers to ongoing, excessive, and arbitrary violence that serves no greater purpose except to instill fear in people. Leaders who engage in relentless cruelty, they create resentment, leading to instability, revolts, and their eventual downfall. Machiavelli argues that while cruelty is often a necessary tool in leadership, it must be measured, it must be rational, and it must be purposeful rather than gratuitous. Leaders who misuse cruelty, they risk alienating their subjects and losing control over their dominion. Let's talk about a case study. Machiavelli, he presents that case study. He presents Agathocles of Syracuse. Agathocles of Syracuse as a key example of a leader who rose to power through ruthless means. Agathocles, a low-born soldier, he seized control of Syracuse by orchestrating a brutal massacre of the ruling elite. However, unlike leaders who descend into unchecked brutality, Agathocles stabilized his rule and created a strong state. Machiavelli does not celebrate Agathocles as a virtuous leader, but he acknowledged the effectiveness of his methods. The key takeaway is that political violence, when used judiciously and in pursuit of stability, it can lead to successful governance. However, excessive cruelty, devoid of a long-term strategy, it breeds only chaos. Here, fear versus love. The leadership dilemma. One of the most famous themes in the Prince is Machiavelli's assertion that it is better for a leader to be feared than loved, as we discussed it numerous times. If one must choose. He explains that human nature is fickle. People may claim loyalty out of love, but when adversity strikes, they abandon their leaders. Fear, on the other hand, it is a more reliable tool because it instills caution, it instills obedience. Machiavelli warns against outright hatred. A ruler who is feared but not hated can maintain control. The moment cruelty becomes excessive, irrational, or unnecessarily humiliating, the leader is inviting rebellion. The leader is inviting rebellion. Let's take the example of Julius Caesar. He wielded power through strategic force, strategic intelligence, and calculated mercy. His clemency toward defeated enemies, it combined with military strength, it made him respected, and to some extent, he was loved. However, his leniency also made him vulnerable, leading to his assassination. If we take Gaius Caligula, unlike Caesar, Caligula ruled through sadistic cruelty, paranoia, and humiliation. He executed senators arbitrarily, declared himself a god, and indulged in extravagant display of power. His reign ended in his assassination because he turned his fear-based rule into terror and humiliation. This contrast, it reinforces Machiavelli's lesson. Fear can be a useful tool, but once it crosses into hatred, the leader's downfall is inevitable. Modern implications of Machiavelli's theory, Machiavelli's insights, they are not limited to the Renaissance era. Modern political and corporates, these readers, they still navigate the delicate balance of power, control, and authority. If we take lessons, Lee Kuan Yew's his leadership in Singapore. Singapore's first Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, he is an example of a leader who applied Machiavellian principle effectively. Under his leadership in Singapore, Singapore transformed from a struggling post-colonial nation into a global economical powerhouse. Lee imposed strict laws, silenced opposition, and employed authoritarian measures to maintain order. However, he did not wield cruelty for personal gratification. His actions were calculated. Once the stability was achieved, his governance shifted towards national progress. Unlike dictators who rule through fear alone, Lee ensured his people's prosperity, legitimizing his leadership. Let us take the second example, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. Lessons in abused cruelty. Unlike Lee in Singapore, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi, they ruled through arbitrary cruelty. They ruled through paranoia. They ruled through continuous repression. They eliminated perceived threats indiscriminately. They silenced opposition through terror and never established a transition from force to stability. Both leaders, they met violent ends, reinforcing Machiavelli's warning that leaders who misuse cruelty, they will eventually be destroyed. And let's see some insights for modern day leaders from this Machiavellian analysis. Modern leaders, whether in politics or in business or military, wherever, they can derive several crucial lessons. First of all, pragmatism over idealism. Effective leadership, it requires making tough decisions. Leaders should be guided by realism rather than idealistic notions that ignore human nature. Strategic use of force. Harsh measures, they may be necessary at times, but they must be applied rationally, swiftly, and with a clear purpose. Balance between fear and respect. Leaders should cultivate respect, but also ensure they command enough authority to prevent rebellion and eliminate threats eventually. When consolidating power, it is crucial to neutralize threats quickly rather than prolonging conflicts that foster instability. Critics argue that Machiavelli's teachings, they promote immorality and they justify unethical actions. However, a deeper analysis, it suggests that the Prince is not a moral guidebook but a pragmatic manual on power. Machiavelli does not encourage cruelty for its own sake. Rather, he acknowledges that power often requires difficult choices. Leaders who refuse to make hard decisions, they risk being overtaken by those who will. His philosophy is not about endorsing evil, but understanding that morality in politics is complex and that leaders must navigate it very carefully. Then finally, the timeless relevance of Machiavelli. Machiavelli's insights, his insights into the ethics and efficacy of cruelty, it remained relevant across the centuries. The world has seen leaders. The world has seen leaders who wield power effectively and those who succumb to their own excess. The central message is clear. Power is neither inherently good nor evil. Power is a tool and its effectiveness depends on the wielder. Modern leaders, they must understand that force and pragmatism, they have their place, but they must be exercised with wisdom and respect. Those who master this balance, they can create stability, they can create progress, and they can create enduring legacies. Those who fail will inevitably be overthrown by those who do. Machiavelli's greatest lesson is this: power is never given freely. It must be taken. It must be taken. Power must be used wisely, tempered with strategic foresight. Power must be tempered with strategic foresight. Leaders who internalize these lessons, they will not only survive but thrive in the ever-changing political and social landscape of the world. In chapters 9 to 12, he explores different types of states, their strengths, the role of public support, church states, and the nature of military forces. These chapters provide deep insights into political power, governance, and military strategy. Let us examine them in detail. Machiavelli's The Prince, chapter number 9, monarchy with public support. In chapter number 9 of The Prince, Niccolo Machiavelli, he delves into the concept of the civil principality, a form of governance where a private citizen ascends to power not through nefarious means or overwhelming force, but with the support and favor of fellow citizens. This ascent, according to Machiavelli, it doesn't hinge on exceptional genius or sheer luck, but rather on a fortunate astuteness, a blend of shrewdness and favorable circumstances. Let's talk about the dual forces within a city. A Machiavellian perspective. Niccolo Machiavelli, in his seminal book, The Prince, he offers an unparalleled examination of power dynamics, governance, and the ever-present struggle between two fundamental factions within any political entity: the nobles and the common people. The nobles and the common people. His observations remain as relevant today as they were in Renaissance Italy. They offer profound lessons on leadership, strategy, and political survival. The two inherent factions, nobles and commoners. Nobles and commoners. Let's talk about Machiavelli, how he identified two opposing yet inextricably linked social forces in every city. The nobles, great men, they are individuals who possess wealth, influence, and a deep-rooted ambition to command, a deep-rooted ambition to dominate, and a deep-rooted ambition to structure the society to their advantage. Their primary motivation is to maintain and expand their power, often at the expense of the broader population. The people, they are the commoners, the general population whose primary aspiration is not power but security. They seek to avoid oppression, they live peacefully, and they ensure their fundamental needs are met. These two forces, they drive the political structure of any society, often clashing in ways that shape governance. Depending on how power is distributed, three possible political outcomes can emerge. Principality. It is a system where a single ruler, the prince, wields power, often supported by either by nobles or by the people. Then we will see the second one, self-government and republicanism. It is a form of governance where power is distributed among elected representatives, ensuring checks and balances between the nobles and the people. And the third one is anarchy. Anarchy is the collapse of authority leading to chaos, lawlessness, and societal disintegration. A principality. Machiavelli argues that a principality often arises when one faction elevates a leader to power and using him as a tool to fulfill their objectives. However, the source of a prince's power determines his rules, stability, and the challenges he will face. Next, we will see the path to power, nobles versus people. Prince. A prince can ascend to power through one of two primary means: by the support of the nobles or by the will of the people. Each path carries its own distinct advantages and perils. Support from the nobles. It is a double-edged sword. Gaining power through noble support, it is fraught with complexity. The nobles are not a mere subordinates, but they are powerful entities in their own right. They often view themselves as equals or potential rivals to the prince. This creates inherent instability for several reasons. Competition for influence. Nobles, they seek power not for governance but for personal gain. They desire influence over the prince. They expect rewards for their support. Lack of true loyalty. The allegiance of the nobles, it is often transactional. If a prince ceases to serve their interest, nobles' interest, they may conspire against him or defect to another power source. Risk of over-reliance. Here we can see, depending too much on the nobles, it makes a prince vulnerable. He may find himself bound by their interests, unable to enact policies beneficial to the broader population. Historical precedents, we can see the downfall of Julius Caesar. It is a prime example of noble ambition overpowering a ruler. The Roman Senate, comprised of aristocratic elite, it saw Caesar's growing power as a threat to their own influence, and ultimately they orchestrated his assassination. The fall of Napoleon Bonaparte, it serves as a classic example of how unchecked ambition it can lead to downfall. After rising to power and establishing himself as an emperor of France, Napoleon's relentless expansionist policies, it led to widespread conflicts across Europe. His disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812 and subsequent defeats, they eventually resulted in his exile, marking the end of his dominance. So, Machiavelli warns that nobles, driven by a relentless thirst for power, they often undermine rulers. They undermine rulers who fail to appease them. A prince who rules solely with the backing of nobles, they may become their puppet or risk being deposed. Now let's talk about support from the people. A foundation for stability. Conversely, a prince who rises with the support of the common people, he enjoys a more stable foundation for growth. Unlike the nobles, the people do not seek dominion. They only need protection, they only need security. This provides distinct advantages. Genuine loyalty. Unlike the nobles who are fickle, who are self-serving, the people are more likely to remain loyal if their well-being is ensured. Sheer numbers, the commoners far outnumber the nobles. Their collective support, it provides strength against internal threats and external aggressions. Then reduce the internal struggles, we can see here. A ruler supported by the people, he faces fewer internal power struggles compared to one reliant on ambitious nobles. Napoleon Bonaparte, he understood the power of popular support, population support. After the French Revolution, he positioned himself as a protector of the people's interests, gaining their backing and rising to become emperor. His early success, they were largely due to the perception that he was the people's ruler rather than an aristocratic oppressor. Machiavelli argues that securing the people's trust is far easier than maintaining the nobles' loyalty. A ruler who satisfies the populace need for security, he can build a lasting reign, whereas nobles, they will always seek to undermine a ruler who does not cater to their ambitions. So, people are important. Then, the Machiavellian strategy for a prince. It's a balancing the nobles, balancing the people. When Machiavelli favors popular support, he acknowledges the necessity of maintaining noble allegiance. A wise prince, he must skillfully manage both passions, ensuring neither becomes too powerful, controlling the ambitions of the nobles. A successful ruler, he must prevent nobles from becoming overly influential. This can be achieved by dividing and conquering, encouraging competition among nobles. It prevents any single one from becoming too powerful. Maintaining a strong military. It's very important. A well-equipped military and loyal to the prince rather than the nobles. It deters any insurrections. A prince must not hesitate to eliminate those who threaten his rule. He has to ensure the well-being of the people, providing security, providing economic stability, providing justice. It strengthens a prince's legitimacy. A satisfied populace, a satisfied population, it is the greatest defense against rebellion and external threats. Then he has to project strength, he has to be cunning. Machiavelli emphasizes that a prince must be both a lion, strong and forceful, and a fox, cunning and strategic. Mere strength without intelligence, it leads to failure. Just as deception without power renders a ruler ineffective. So, Machiavelli's analysis of the interplay between nobles and commoners, it remains profoundly relevant in modern governance. Whether in democratic societies or authoritarian regimes, the struggle between elites and the masses, it continues to shape political landscapes. Historical events from the French Revolution to contemporary populist movements, they illustrate how power vacuums arise when rulers fail to manage these competing forces effectively. Political leaders today, they must navigate these tensions carefully, balancing elite influence while ensuring the people's trust. Ultimately, Machiavelli provides an enduring lesson. Power is not inherently stable. It must be actively maintained through a combination of strategic alliances, calculated decisions, and an acute understanding of human nature. A ruler who comprehends and masterfully manipulates these dual forces, nobles' ambition and popular desire, it stands the best chance of achieving lasting dominance and stability. So, this is chapter number 9. Now let's turn to chapter number 10. Here in chapter number 10, assessing a state's strength, it delves into the crucial aspects of determining whether a state can defend itself independently or if it is reliant on external forces. The core argument Machiavelli presents is that the most powerful and enduring states, they are those that are self-sufficient There are those that fortified, and there are those that are capable of raising their own armies. States that depend on mercenaries, alliances, or foreign aid, they are inherently weak and susceptible to collapse. Let's talk about the foundation of strength. Self-sufficiency versus dependence. Machiavelli asserts that a ruler must evaluate their state's capacity for self-defense. A state that can raise its own army and withstand sieges without external help is strong. A state that relies on external forces such as foreign mercenaries or allied powers, it is weak. He wants that dependency on others. It leaves a ruler vulnerable, as foreign support can be unreliable and it is costly and ultimately serve the interest of the external benefactors. External benefactors rather than the state itself. So Machiavelli draws from historical examples to illustrate this point. He notes that German city-state of his time, they were highly secure because they were well fortified and well maintained their own defensive mechanism. They were not dependent on foreign armies, but instead they relied on their own preparedness. In contrast, Italian city-states, such as foreigners, they were frequently at risk due to their reliance on mercenaries who were often disloyal, self-interested, and quick to abandon a losing cause. A contemporary example of self-sufficiency is Israel, a nation that has invested heavily in military technology and national defense rather than relying solely on allies. Its Iron Dome missile defense system, highly trained military forces, and emphasis on self-relevance, it aligns with the Machiavellian principles of state security. By contrast, nations that rely heavily on foreign military bases, defense agreements, or outsourced security forces, they face the perpetual risk of abandonment. So, let's talk about the fortification. Fortification as a political and military strategy. Machiavelli places significant emphasis on fortification as a means of ensuring the security of a state. A well-fortified city, it acts as a deterrent to potential invaders, making conquest arduous and costly. He argues that leaders who maintain well-defended cities, they ensure their citizens' loyalty and they will not be easily overthrown. He praises German cities. Machiavelli praises German cities for their effective defense, noting their strong walls, artillery, and stockpiles of supplies, which make them difficult to besiege. The principle of fortification is not limited to physical defenses. A strong financial system, a strong economic resilience, and ideological unity, it also serves as a modern fortification. Countries with a stable economy, a well-maintained infrastructure, and a loyal citizens, they are less susceptible to external coercion. The Soviet Union, despite its eventual collapse, Soviet Union maintained an extensive defense network during the Cold War, which deterred external aggression for decades. China's Great Firewall serves as a digital fortification, controlling information flow and preventing foreign influence from destabilizing its governance. Now let's talk about the dangers of mercenary and auxiliary forces. Machiavelli repeatedly warns against the uses of mercenaries and auxiliary forces. Mercenaries they are the soldiers who fight for money rather than loyalty. They make them unreliable in the long run. If a battle turns unfavorable, mercenaries, they will often abandon their employment. Then we'll talk about the auxiliary forces, which are borrowed from an ally. They can be equally dangerous. If victorious, they may refuse to leave, effectively occupying the state they were meant to protect. A historical example is the falling of the Byzantine Empire, which frequently relied on mercenaries and external forces for protection. The infamous betrayal. Let's see the infamous betrayal by the mercenary Tatar company in the early 14th century, which turned against the Byzantine after being hired to fight the Turks. It underscores Machiavelli's warning. Similarly, the collapse of the Roman Empire. The collapse of the Roman Empire. It was hastened by its dependence on barbarian mercenaries. Barbarian mercenaries who eventually turned on Rome itself. Modern parallels, they can be seen in Afghanistan, where reliance on foreign military support from the United States and NATO ultimately proved unstable. When the US withdrew the Afghanistan government, it quickly collapsed as it lacked a strong internal defense system and it had become dependent on external forces for security. Now, let's talk about the role of citizens. The role of citizens in defense and stability. Machiavelli highlights the importance of maintaining the loyal citizen. A ruler who is not hated by the people and provides for their welfare, he can better withstand external threats. He argues that rulers should keep their people occupied, people engaged, ensuring they have livelihoods and interests aligned with the state's stability. One of his key observations is that when a city is well fortified and its citizens, they trust their leader, even a long siege will not break their resolve. He warns against rulers who ignore public sentiment, as internal rebellion can be just as dangerous as an external invasion. The French Revolution, it offers a stark example of, despite having strong fortifications, the monarchy collapsed because it had lost the trust and support of its citizens. In contemporary geopolitics, we can talk about Singapore. It provides an example of a fortified city state with a strong internal system. It has invested in a national service, ensuring that every citizen contributes to defense preparedness. Its strategic location, economic policies, and social cohesion, they have made it one of the most secure and stable nations despite its small size of Singapore. Now let's talk about the psychological and strategic warfare. Machiavelli understood that warfare is not just physical, but warfare is also psychological. A strong leader must maintain control through a combination of fear, respect, and calculated generosity. Machiavelli advised rulers to create a perception of invincibility so that enemies hesitate before attack. This strategy can be seen in the Cold War doctrine of mutually assured destruction, where both US and Soviet Union, they maintained such powerful nuclear arsenals that neither dared to initiate direct conflict. By making war appear too costly, both sides maintained a fragile peace. Similarly, modern leaders use economic sanctions, cyber warfare, and diplomatic isolation as strategic fortifications. The US sanctions on Iran is an example. They are designed to weaken it. They are designed to weaken Iraq from within rather than relying on direct military confrontation. This aligned with Machiavelli's idea that a ruler should seek to make an attack against them. It appears too difficult or too costly to pursue. Then Let's talk about the eternal relevance of Machiavellian statecraft. Machiavelli's insights on state strength it remains profoundly relevant. His emphasis on self-sufficiency, fortification, citizen loyalty, and strategic difference they can be applied to even today in 2025 to modern governance. Which can be applied to military strategies and geopolitical decision making, whether in ancient Italy or Cold War superpowers or modern nation states. Machiavelli principles they serve as a guide for leaders who seek stability and longevity in power. A wise ruler, according to Machiavelli, a wise ruler, he must ensure that their state is fortified, not just in wars and armies, but in economic stability, political unity, and citizens' loyalty. By maintaining control over their resources and not relying on external forces, a leader can withstand both internal unrest and external threats. Now let's talk about chapter number 11. It offers a unique perspective on ecclesiastical principalities, states ruled by religious authorities. Unlike other forms of government that depends on military strength, that depends on strategic alliances, or that depends on economic control, church states they derive their power from divine authority and religious institutions. This makes them exceptionally resilient, and in Machiavellian's view, it is virtually invulnerable to the threats that secular rulers must constantly guard against. Their legitimacy is sustained not by force but by faith. And this ideological dominance it enables them to exert a profound influence over political affairs. Let's talk about the unique nature of church states. Machiavelli notes that ecclesiastical principalities they are different. They are different from other forms of governance. They are established through either fortune or prowess, but once in power, they require neither to maintain control. Unlike monarchies, unlike republics, or unlike military states, that they must continuously defend their authority. Church rulers enjoy a self-sustaining form of governance, protected by their religious institutions. This makes them fundamentally secure. One of the most critical observations Machiavelli makes is that ecclesiastical rulers they do not have to govern their subjects in the traditional sense. The people under their rule they do not expect the same kind of political oversight, military defense, or legal enforcement that secular rulers must provide. Instead, their governance is spiritual in nature, and the obedience they command is based on religious devotion rather than coercion or legal frameworks. This allows them to maintain power even in the face of corruption, even in the face of corruption, even in the face of incompetence, or even in the face of political upheaval. Let's see the strength of ideological control. The power of ecclesiastical principalities it stems from their ability to shape ideology. The Catholic Church, if we take, it exerted immense influence over European politics for centuries. Not because of its military might, not because of its military might, but because of its control over religious doctrine, religious morality, and the spiritual lives of its followers. This ideological monopoly, it meant that even kings, emperors, they had to seek papal approval to legitimize their rule. Similarly, powerful religious institutions today, such as the Vatican, they maintain their status not through force, but through deep-rooted beliefs and traditions. Leaders who understand the importance of controlling narratives and ideological legitimacy, they can maintain power. They can maintain power more effectively than those who rely solely on military or economic strength. these entities, they sought to maintain a delicate balance of power to prevent any one of them from gaining complete dominance. The Pope, despite being a spiritual leader, he was also a political actor. He often engages in a power struggle with these other rulers. One of the main factors that weakened the papacy's political influence in earlier times, it was the presence of feuding Roman barons, particularly the Orsini and the Colonna families. These factions, they constantly at war with one another. They kept the Pope from consolidating control over Rome and its surrounding territories. No single Pope ruled long enough to completely eradicate one faction before another arose to challenge him. However, with the arrival of Pope Alexander VI, the situation changed dramatically. Pope Alexander VI, through his strategic use of his son Cesare Borgia as a military enforcer, he managed to subdue many of these factions and expanded the church's temporal power. While his primary goal was to secure power for his own family, the ultimate beneficiary of his actions was the Catholic Church. Catholic Church. Now let's talk about the role of Alexander VI and Julius II in strengthening the church state. Machiavelli, he pays special attention to Alexander VI and Julius II, two popes who transformed the papal states into a formidable political entity. Alexander VI, through his use of military force and cunning diplomacy, he was able to consolidate power in a way that no previous pope had managed. His son Borgia, he played a crucial role in eliminating rival faction and bringing much of Italy under papal control. Julius II continued Alexander's work, using his political acumen to expand the church's influence even further. Unlike Alexander, who pursued power for personal gain, Julius II, he sought to strengthen the church itself. He successfully waged wars against the Venetians and expelled the French from Italy, further solidifying the Pope states as a dominant force in European politics. And leaders who can establish ideological dominance, they can maintain power even in the absence of military. Then you see institutional strength over individual power. Unlike monarchies that rely on the confidence of individual rulers, ecclesiastical principalities, they are sustained by institutions. This means they can withstand weak or corrupt leaders because the institution itself commands authority. Then let's talk about manipulating faith. Manipulating faith for political gains. Catholic Church ability to blend spiritual authority with the political maneuvering, it made it one of the most powerful entities in European history. Modern leaders, they can learn from this by understanding how to wield soft power. How to wield soft power through cultural, ideological or religious influence. Then we'll see the importance of stability. Unlike secular states that are prone to rebellion and external threats, ecclesiastical principalities, they enjoy a high degree of stability because due to their religious legitimacy. Leaders who can establish a similar perception of legitimacy, they can reduce the likelihood of internal dissent. Then we can see the modern patterns and modern applications. The influence of religion in politics. It is not confined to the era of Machiavelli. Even today, religious institutions, they play a significant role in shaping political landscapes. Nations like Iran, where religious leaders they hold supreme power. They demonstrate the continuing relevance of Machiavelli's observation. The Vatican City, despite being a small state, it continues to exert global influence due to its moral and ideological authority. Similarly, political movements and parties that successfully integrate ideological narratives into their platforms, they often find long-term success. For instance, nationalist movements that blend the political rhetoric with the cultural or religious identity, they tend to have more staying power than those that rely purely on economic policy. Now, Machiavelli's insights into church states, it highlights the profound impact of ideological control in politics. Unlike secular rulers who must constantly defend their authority through force or diplomacy, ecclesiastical leaders they wield power through faith and institutional legitimacy. It makes them uniquely resilient and capable of exerting influence far beyond their territorial boundaries. For modern political leaders, Machiavelli's analysis it serves as a guide to understanding the enduring power of institutions, the importance of controlling narratives, and the necessity of ideological legitimacy. Whether in politics, or in business, or in international relations, those who master these principles, they can achieve lasting influence without the need for constant conflict or coercion. Ultimately, the prince teaches us that power is not merely about military might or economic strength. It is about shaping perception. It is about controlling ideologies. It is about ensuring the stability of institutions. The lesson from church states, it remains as relevant today as they were in Machiavelli's time. They offer a blueprint for those who seek to maintain authority in an ever-changing world. Let's talk about the chapter number 12, different kinds of armies and the dangers of mercenaries. Machiavelli's discourse on military organizations in the Prince of it offers a profound lesson in statecraft. In chapter number 12, he vehemently criticizes the use of mercenary forces, deeming them unreliable. Mercenaries are unreliable. They are self-interested and ultimately dangerous to the sovereignty of any principality. His argument extends beyond a mere preference for citizen armies. It is a cautionary tale of how misplaced trust in foreign or non-loyal forces it can dismantle the very foundation of a state. By delving into historical examples, political philosophy, and contemporary analogies, we can uncover the deep layers of Machiavelli's wisdom in the art of governance and art of warfare. Let's talk about the mercenary armies. Mercenary armies, a threat to sovereignty. They are the threat to sovereignty. Machiavelli argues that mercenaries, being motivated solely by monetary gain, they lack true allegiance to the state or to the ruler they serve. Their loyalty is transient, shifting according to whoever offers them the highest reward and the highest deed. This mercenary mindset breeds disloyalty, cowardice, and opportunistic approach to war. When peace prevails, they become a financial burden, and in times of conflict, they prove ineffective or even treacherous. One of the most infamous examples supporting Machiavelli's assertion is that the fall of the Roman Empire. The fall of the Roman Empire. As Rome expanded, it increasingly relied on hired barbarian forces rather than its own disciplined legions. Over time, these mercenaries, having no inherent loyalty to Rome, they turned against it state, leading to the empire's eventual collapse. The lesson here is clear. When a state depends on mercenary troops, it places its security in the hands of those who have no vested interest in its survival. Machiavelli also highlights the fight of Italy during his time. The reliance on mercenary troops left the Italian state vulnerable to foreign invasions. As these hired soldiers, they had no real stake in defending the homeland. When Charles VIII of France he invaded Italy, he faced little resistance as Italian mercenaries either fled or capitulated without a fight. The catastrophe, Machiavelli asserts, it was a direct consequence of Italy's misplaced trust in non-citizen armies. So let's talk about now citizen armies. The key to a strong state, citizen armies. In contrast, Machiavelli champions the formation of citizen armies. He argues that only those who have a personal stake in their homeland, they will fight with true valor. A state's own subjects, when trained and disciplined, they form a more cohesive and loyal force than mercenaries ever. The example of the Roman Republic, before its reliance on foreign soldiers, it illustrates this principle perfectly. Rome's early expansion, Rome's early dominance, they were fueled by citizen soldiers. They fought not for pay, but for the glory and survival of their nation. Similarly, the success of the French Revolution. It's a revolution's national army. It underscores Machiavelli's argument. Unlike the monarchies of Europe that relied on mercenary mercenary forces, revolutionary France mobilized its own citizens who fought with fervor and commitment. This shifting military strategy allowed France to resist external threats and spread revolutionary ideals across Europe. Let's see the modern parallel. Private military contractors. Machiavelli insights, they remain eerily relevant in modern times. Today, many nations, they employ private military contractors. They employ private military contractors for various military operations. While these forces can be effective in certain short-term engagements, they pose significant risks to national security. The United States heavy reliance on these private military people in conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan, it served as a contemporary case study. These contractors, much like Machiavelli's mercenaries, these contractors, they operate primarily for profit. Their loyalty to the hiring state is conditional, and in some cases, their actions have undermined diplomatic and military objectives. A striking example we can take here. That is the case of Blackwater. Now we call it as Academy. A private military firm employed by the US government. Several incidents involving Blackwater operatives, including human rights abuses and excessive use of force, it led to severe political and diplomatic repercussions. The unpredictability and the lack of accountability surrounding such forces, it echoed Machiavelli's warnings about the perils of mercenaries. Now let's see the psychological implications as well as political implications. Beyond the battlefield, Machiavelli's critique of mercenary forces, he extends into political philosophy. A ruler who relies on high strength, he is inherently weak as he places his power in the hands of those who may easily betray him. This applies not only to military affairs but also to governance itself. A prince who depends on external advisors or foreign influence rather than cultivating loyalty among his own people, he risks losing control. History provides numerous instances, numerous examples where political leaders they have been undermined by their reliance on external forces. The downfall of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines often hired foreign soldiers, but as the empire weakened, these mercenaries they became unreliable and eventually ineffective in defending the state. It allies with Machiavelli's argument. A state that cannot stand on its own military strength, it is destined to fall. So let's talk about the role of auxiliary forces. Machiavelli also warns against the use of auxiliary forces, troops, the borrowed from allied nations. When seemingly more reliable than mercenaries, auxiliaries they pose their own dangers. If they begin a battle for a prince, the victory belongs not to him but to the external power that supplied the troops. The state then becomes dependent on its allies, potentially compromising its sovereignty. Let's take a historical example. It is the fate of Carthage, which relied heavily on auxiliary troops during its conflicts with Rome. Despite its economic wealth, Carthage it depends on foreign soldiers, weakening its strategic position. When these forces were no longer reliable, Carthage it was unable to defend itself effectively, leading to its destruction in the Napoleonic War. So finally, we'll see the Machiavelli's enduring. Machiavelli's insights into military strategy they extend far beyond the realm of warfare. They serve as a broader metaphor for governance, stability, and self-reliance. His core lesson is clear. A state must cultivate its own strength rather than depend on external force. Whether through military might, political autonomy, or economic reliance. True power comes from within. This principle holds weight in contemporary geopolitics. Nations that rely excessively on foreign aid, military alliances, or economic dependencies, they risk compromising their sovereignty. In contrast, those that build robust internal institutions, they maintain strong civic engagement and they develop self-sufficient defense mechanism. They are far better positioned to endure challenges. Machiavelli's warning against mercenaries, it is ultimately a call for self-reliance. A prince or any leader, any ruler, they must secure his rule through his own means rather than borrowing strength from others. The lessons from Rome, the lessons from Italy, the lessons from modern conflicts, all they affirm this argument. As history repeatedly shows, the power that comes from within is the only power that truly lasts. Politics has always been a game of power, a game of manipulation, and a game of strategy. When we look at history, we see that some of the most successful leaders were those who understood the art of leadership in its raw, unfiltered form. One of the most compelling frameworks for understanding such raw leadership, it comes from Niccolo Machiavelli. His ideas have shaped the paths of many influential leaders. Today, let's explore. Let's explore what it means to be a Machiavellian leader and how these principles have been applied by leaders like Stalin, Mussolini, Napoleon, and Indira Gandhi. Machiavelli believed that a ruler must be cunning, strategic, and sometimes ruthless to maintain power. argued that the ends often justify the means, meaning that achieving a goal, it can excuse the methods used. This is not about being cruel for the sake of cruelty. It is about using calculated actions. It is about using calculated actions to ensure stability and control. A Machiavellian leader, he uses power intelligently, controlling narratives, suppressing opposition, and ensuring absolute loyalty. A Machiavellian leader does not necessarily have to be cruel, but they must be shrewd, they must be calculating, and they must always a step ahead of their enemies and opponents. Throughout history, some leaders have mastered the art of ruling with absolute authority, shaping nations through calculated moves and unshakable dominance. Today we have one such leader, for example. He was Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin, the ruler of the Soviet Union from 1924 to 1953. His leadership, it stands as a perfect example of Machiavellian principles in action. He understood that power is not given, it is taken, it is controlled, and it is maintained through strategy, fear, and manipulation. He did not just govern, he ruled with an iron fist, ensuring that every aspect of life in the Soviet Union revolved around his will. He controlled the narrative. He controlled the narrative with masterful propaganda, shaping public perception to make people believe that he was not just a leader, but he was a protector. He was a father figure, and he was the architect of Soviet progress. His image filled the streets. His name echoed in speeches, and his achievements, they became part of history books. People saw what he wanted them to see and believed what he wanted them to believe. He erased his political rivals. He rewrote history, and he convinced the masses that without him, the nation would collapse. His power did not rely on truth. It relied on what he made others believe to be true. He understood the power of fear, and he used it ruthlessly. When a ruler cannot be both feared and loved, it is always safer to be feared. He made sure that anyone who opposes him, they disappear. The Great Purge of 1936 to 1938, it wiped out more than 1 million people through executions, imprisonment, and forced labor. Political opponents, military officers, intellectuals, and even ordinary citizens, they faced arrest and exile. People lived in a constant fear, knowing that a single vote against the government, it could send them to the infamous gulags. Where survival was a rare privilege. Fear paralyzed opposition, it crushed rebellion, and secured his rule for decades. He kept people united by creating enemies, both real and imaginary. He painted foreign powers as threats, ensuring that people looked at the outside world with suspicion while rallying behind him as their only hope, as their only hero. He eliminated internal enemies. Like Trotsky, portraying him as a villain plotting against the nation. He He convinced people that without a strong leader, external enemies would destroy the Soviet Union. When Nazi Germany invaded in 1941, he turned the war into an opportunity. He turned the war into an opportunity to reinforce his position, inspiring people to fight under his command. Even after the war, he continued the strategy using the Cold War to justify absolute control, portraying the capitalist world as a constant threat. He knew that military power was the backbone of an unchallenged rule. He ensured that the Soviet Union maintained the largest military force. It expanded the Red Army to over 12 million soldiers. 12 million soldiers after World War II. He built the nation's first nuclear weapon in 1949, making the Soviet Union a superpower. He purged the military. He purged the military of anyone who could challenge him, executing 35,000 officers, including top-ranking generals. No one in the army could rise to power against him because he made sure that their survival completely depended on their loyalty. He did not just rule politically, he controlled the economy with brutal efficiency. He pushed industrialization at an unprecedented speed, making the Soviet Union the second largest industrial power in the world by 1940. His five-year plans forced the country into rapid development, increasing steel production from 4 million tons in 1928 to 18 million tons by 1940. But progress came at a horrifying cost. It came at horrifying cost. His policy of forced collectivization, it led to the Holodomor famine of 1932-1930, killing nearly 4 million Ukrainians. Yet he presented these disasters as a sacrifice for the greater good, convincing people that suffering was necessary for the nation's rise. He controlled the legal system. Stalin controlled the legal system and dispensed justice without trials. He did not rely on courts or legal procedures. His votes alone decided life and death. His secret police arrested people without explanation, and anyone suspected of disloyalty, they disappeared overnight. Even his closest allies, they were not safe. Those who helped him rise to power, they found themselves facing execution when they became a potential threat. His ability to eliminate rivals, it ensured that no one could ever challenge his position. He did not allow his name to be forgotten. His image appeared on buildings, his image appeared on books and in schools. People read about his greatness. They studied his leadership and repeated his name in conversations. He transformed his rule into a religion, ensuring that future generations would see him as a larger than life figure. Even today, some people in Russia and former Soviet states, they still view him as a hero. They still see him as a hero. A testament to how deeply his legacy was embedded into the nation's consciousness. He is the one who followed every Machiavellian principle with perfection. Stalin controlled information. He instead of love. He created enemies to unite his people, strengthened his military to maintain power, crushed opposition before it could rise, and justified suffering as a necessary sacrifice for the nation's progress. He proved that a ruler does not need to be just. A ruler does not need to be just. He only needs to be strong, feared, and always one step ahead of his enemies and opponents. His reign, it may have ended in 1953, but his strategies, they continue to inspire political leaders all over the world. His story remains a lesson in how power can be seized, how power can be controlled, and how power can be maintained by those who understand that politics is not about morality, it is about survival. Despite his cruelty, Stalin's achievements, they cannot be ignored, especially his role in stopping Hitler during the World War II. It perfectly aligns with the Machiavellian principles. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941 under Operation Barbarossa, Stalin understood that fear and force were necessary to rally his people. He tightened his grip on power. He executed deserters and ensured absolute obedience, just as Machiavelli advised that a ruler must be both feared and respected. At the Battle of Stalingrad, in 1942 to 1943, one of the bloodiest battles in history, Stalin's ruthless leadership and unwavering command, he forced the Soviet Red Army to fight until victory, resulting in Germany's catastrophic defeat. He manipulated history in real time, portraying himself as the savior of the nation, strengthening his cult of personality by controlling the media, by suppressing dissent, and using fear as a weapon. He maintained order even in the face of chaos. His industrial policies, though they were brutal, they turned the Soviet Union into a war machine, allowing it to outmaneuver Nazi Germany. It demonstrated Machiavelli's principle that the ends justify the means. His aggressive international stance after the war, it ensured that the Soviet Union emerged as a superpower. Proving the effectiveness of Machiavellian tactics in geopolitics. Even today, his cult following persists because many see him not just as a dictator, but as a leader who used fear, propaganda, and absolute control to build a strong nation, just as Machiavelli predicted. People often remember a ruler for his victories rather than his methods, and for many, Stalin's transformation of the Soviet Union into a global force, it overweighs the terror he inflicted. Now let's turn to Indian politics. Indian politics has seen its share of Machiavellian leaders, those who master the art of power, manipulation, and strategic governance to maintain control. We can see it from Jawaharlal Nehru days, from the days of Jawaharlal Nehru to today, Narendra Modi. Many political leaders, they have used Machiavellian tactics to raise and sustain power. If we take the example of Indira Gandhi, She was a prime example of Machiavellian ruler. Indira Gandhi was not just a leader, she was a phenomenon. She understood power better than most and knew exactly how to hold on to it. When she faced opposition, she did not hesitate to crush it. She did not hesitate to crush it. During the emergency in 1975, she suspended civil rights, controlled the press, arrested her opponents, and ruled with an iron fist. She eliminated challenges. She eliminated challenges to her authority, just as Machiavelli advised. By centralizing power, she ensured that her voice was law, leaving no room for rebellion. The press, the courts, and even the parliament, they were brought under her control. She knew that controlling information, it meant controlling perception. And she made sure that people only saw what she wanted them to see. Machiavelli believed that fear was stronger force than loving maintaining power. Indira Gandhi understood this deeply. She used the power of the state to silence her critics. Political leaders, student activists, and journalists who spoke against her, they were thrown into jail. Opposition leaders like Jayaprakash Narayan and Morarji Desai, they were arrested. The government censored newspapers, preventing any dissenting voices from reaching the people. Fear spread across the nation, but it ensured that no one could challenge her authority. Even forced sterilization programs were carried out under Sanjay Gandhi's policies, aiming to control population growth. It demonstrated how a Machiavellian ruler prioritizes state goals over individual rights. Indira Gandhi's slogan. India is Indira, Indira is India. It was not just a political statement. It was psychological warfare. She made herself the symbol of the nation. People saw her as the mother of India, the one leader who could guide the country through its challenges. This was classic Machiavellian strategy. Creating a cult of personality that made her indispensable. Her face was everywhere. Her name echoed in speeches, and her image, it was carefully crafted to project strength and wisdom. Like Stalin, like Joseph Stalin in Russia, and other Machiavellian rulers, she understood the power of symbolism and controlled her narrative masterfully. However, Indira Gandhi was not just about control. She was also a strategic genius. In 1971, she led India to victory in the Bangladesh Liberation War. A move that cemented India's status as a regional power. Just within 13 days, the Indian army crushed Pakistani forces, leading to the creation of Bangladesh. This was Indira Gandhi's strategic brilliance. This was her strategic brilliance, using military power to reshape the map of South Asia. Machiavelli would have admired her for her ability to use war not just for defense, but for expanding influence. She also used economic policies to consolidate her power. In 1969, Indira Gandhi nationalized banks a move that made her popular among the poor and working class, while weakening industrialists who opposed her. She abolished private purses, ending the financial privileges of former Indian princes, further solidifying her image as a champion of the common people. By weakening powerful groups, and positioning herself as the only leader who truly cared for the masses, she strengthened her control over the country. Machiavelli advised rulers to make people dependent on them, and Indira Gandhi did exactly what he said, what he advised. Even her downfall and her comeback, it reflected Machiavellian strategy. After the emergency ended in 1977, she lost the elections, but she waited. She waited, bided her time and returned to power in 1980. She knew how to use the weakness of her opponents. The Janata Party government that replaced Indira Gandhi was unstable and lacked strong leadership. People began to feel that only Indira Gandhi could bring stability. She allowed the chaos to unfold, and when the time was right, she reclaimed her throne. Machiavelli taught that a ruler must know when to retreat and when to strike. And she mastered this art. Her handling of the Khalistan movement, it showed another side of Machiavellian leadership. Ruthless action in the face of rebellion. When six separatists they occupied the Golden Temple in Amritsar, she ordered Operation Blue Star in 1984, sending the Indian Army to remove the militants. The operation was a military success, but deeply angered many Sikhs. This decision ultimately led to her assassination by her Sikh bodyguards. But until the very end, Indira Gandhi remained a leader who never backed down from using force when she believed it was necessary. Even today in 2025, Indira Gandhi remains one of the most debated figures in Indian history. Some remember her as a dictator, others as a savior. But one thing is undeniable. She ruled with absolute authority, controlled perception, used fear, and took decisive actions, just as Machiavelli advised. She proved that a leader must not only be strong, but must also be seen as indispensable. She followed the Machiavellian playbook almost perfectly. She demonstrated that power is not just about holding office. It is about controlling the minds. Indira Gandhi's legacy stands as a testament to Machiavellian's principles in leadership. Power must be seized. Power must be maintained. And power must be strategically exercised. Indira Gandhi reshaped India's political landscape, emerging as an undisputed leader by eliminating opposition, controlling narratives, and using both fear and admiration to strengthen her position. She led India to a decisive victory in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, proving that military strength and calculated aggression, they can elevate a nation global standing. Her nationalization of banks in 1969 and the abolition of private purses, it weakened financial elites and royal privileges, reinforcing Machiavelli's idea that a ruler must cut down the power of those who could challenge the authority. Even after losing the power in 1977, she displayed masterful political strategy, returning in 1980 by exploiting the failure of the Janata government, just as Machiavelli advised rulers to strike when the time is right. Her ruthless suppression of the Khalistan insurgency and her iron-fisted control during the emergency, they reflected the belief that political stability sometimes requires authoritarian measures. Even to this day, she remains both revered and criticized, proving Machiavelli's timeless lessons. A true leaders, they are not bound by morality, but they are bound by necessity, they are bound by strength, and they are bound by ability to shape history in their favor. That is the story of Indira Gandhi in view of Machiavelli's principle. But here is the real question. Why do Machiavellian leaders succeed? Because people want strong leaders. In times of crisis, in times of uncertainty, in times of instability, people look for a leader who can take charge. Machiavelli argued that people are naturally fearful and easily manipulated. A smart leader understands this and uses it to their advantage. Whether it is by controlling information, suppressing opposition, or creating a personality cult. Machiavellian leaders, they know how to play the game. They know how to play the game. However, there is a danger. Power without morality, it leads to destruction. Stalin, Hitler, and Mussolini, they followed Machiavellian principles, but they became dictators who brought suffering to millions. In India too, we must be cautious. A leader who becomes too powerful, too unquestionable, that leader can destroy democracy itself. That is why checks and balances, they are necessary. The media, the judiciary, and the people, they must always question, they must always analyze, and they must always hold leaders accountable to protect our democracy. Being a leader, it does not always mean being liked. Machiavelli suggested that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. This is a powerful lesson for all of us. Leadership requires difficult decisions, and sometimes standing alone, it requires the strength to act in ways that may not always be popular but are necessary for the greater good. Leadership also requires a moral compass. Just because a strategy is effective, it does not mean it is ethical. The true challenge is to blend the cunning of Machiavelli with the compassion and integrity of a just leader. So let's combine the cunningness of Machiavelli with the compassion and integrity. Let's take these lessons to heart and think critically about the leaders we choose to follow and the kind of leaders we want to become. We can learn from history without repeating its mistakes. By understanding the strategies used by leaders like Stalin, we can build a future where power is wielded wisely and compassionately. in our own lives. We may not be ruling nations. We may not be ruling nations. But we still have the influence over those who are around us. Let us use our power to inspire, uplift, and bring about positive change. Leadership is not just about control. It's about guiding others towards a better future. Let's commit ourselves to being leaders who are wise, courageous, and kind. Because in the end, the most lasting power, it comes not from fear, but from respect, but from trust, and from a shared vision for a better world. Thank you. Thank you so much. Today, let's talk about Niccolo Machiavelli. Machiavelli was not just a thinker, he was a survivor in a ruthless world. Born in 1469, he lived in an Italy torn apart by wars, conspiracies, and betrayals. He worked as a diplomat, a strategist, and a keen observer of power. He saw rulers rise, he saw rulers fall. And he realized that success in politics was not about virtue, but about strength, cunning, and control. His experiences shaped his most famous work, The Prince, where he had laid down the harsh realities of leadership and politics. Many call him the father of modern political science because he stripped politics of idealism and revealed its true nature. Power is taken, power is not given. Power is taken, not given. And leaders must do whatever it is necessary to keep the power. Machiavelli suffered for his ideas. He was imprisoned, tortured, and exiled, but he did not break. Instead, he turned his pain into knowledge. He studied rulers, dissected their actions, and showed the world that politics is not about morality, but about survival. His insights were not just about Italy, they applied to every ruler, every country, and in every era. He exposed the truth that people often refuse to accept. Leaders are not judged by their kindness, but by their ability to hold on to power. His ideas influenced countless rulers, from Napoleon to Mussolini, and continue to shape even modern day politics. Today, leaders use his strategies in ways he could never imagine. They control narrative, they manipulate public perceptions, and they use fear to maintain orders. His lessons remain as relevant as ever, proving that the game of power has not changed. Only the players have changed. Machiavelli did not just write about politics, he revealed its soul, or the very soul of politics. Those who understand him rule the world. Leaders throughout history, they have followed Machiavellian principles to gain and maintain power. These strategies, whether used for control, expansion, or survival, they have shaped the course of nations. Those who master these tactics, they ruled for years, while those who ignored their limits, they often met downfall. The art of ruling is not about morality, but about practicality. A ruler must understand the nature of power, the weakness of people, and the necessity of control. The greatest leaders did not rely on goodwill alone. They used intelligence, they used fear, they used force, and they used deception. They built systems that ensured loyalty and crushed oppositions before it could grow strong. Paralyzing individual intelligence is one of the oldest tactics of control. When people do not think for themselves, they become easier to govern. Leaders who followed Machiavelli's advice, they discouraged critical thinking and they discouraged independent reasoning. They filled educational systems with controlled narratives, ensuring that people learned what the ruler wanted them to believe. In total, at authoritarian regimes, intellectuals were either silenced or made to serve the state's propaganda. In 1933, Adolf Hitler purged universities. Hitler purged universities of independent thinkers, ensuring that education aligned with Nazi ideology. Joseph Stalin eliminated scholars who questioned his policies, making sure only state-approved ideas were taught. National prejudice is a powerful tool to unite people under a leader. By making citizens believe that they are superior to others, these rulers create blind loyalty. Machiavelli understood that patriotism could be turned into a weapon. Leaders who followed this tactic they portrayed outside as threats and justified their own aggressive policies. In Italy, Benito Mussolini promoted the idea of Italian supremacy, claiming that the Roman Empire must be revived. In Germany, Hitler used racial ideology to justify expansion and war. By supporting national prejudice, these rulers ensured that people saw them as protectors rather than oppressors. Hiding everything that is going on in the world prevents people from knowing the truth. A ruler who controls information, they control the minds of the people. The Soviet Union under Stalin, China under Mao Zedong, and North Korea under Kim Jong-un, they all follow this strategy. They all followed Machiavellian strategy. They controlled newspapers, they controlled radio, they controlled televisions, they banned foreign books and censored the internet. They made sure that citizens only saw what the state wanted them to see. North Korea remains a modern example of complete media control, where people know little about the outside world and believe their leader is almost godlike. Aggressive international relations. Aggressive international relations are a sign of strength. Machiavelli advised rulers to act first rather than wait for enemies to strike. History remembers leaders who expanded their territories, not those who played it safe. Napoleon Bonaparte built a massive empire because he acted aggressively. He attacked Prussia, he attacked Austria, and he attacked Russia before they could unite against him. In 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, forcing the world into war. In modern times, Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, it follows this Machiavellian approach, seizing power before opposition becomes strong. Using the full scope of military services necessary for a ruler to protect the state. Machiavelli warned that mercenaries and auxiliary forces are unreliable. A strong national army is the backbone of power. Napoleon introduced mass conscription and ensuring that France had a steady supply of soldiers. Hitler and Stalin, they built military industries that focused on national defense. The United States maintains global dominance by spending over $800 billion annually on defense. A nation without a strong military is always at the mercy of stronger powers. Prohibiting absolute freedom, it prevents chaos. Machiavelli understood that too much freedom weakens the state. Leaders who followed this principle, they controlled personal liberties while maintaining the illusion of democracy. Stalin, he banned political opposition, but he called his rule the people's government. Mussolini outlawed strikes and protests, but claimed he was protecting workers. In modern times, China monitors internet activity and censors dissent while promoting social harmony. The illusion of freedom, it keeps people obedient while ensuring the ruler's control remains absolute. Controlling one's subordinates is essential. A ruler must never allow his advisors to become too powerful. Stalin frequently perjured his own officials, ensuring no one could challenge him. Hitler eliminated leaders within his own party during the Night of the Long Knives in 1934. Kim Jong-un, he executed his own uncle to prevent a potential rival from gaining influence. Fear keeps subordinates loyal. If they believe betrayal will lead to their death, they remain obedient. Dispensing justice without courts, it eliminates the slow process of law. A powerful ruler does not need legal systems to punish enemies. Stalin sent millions to labor camps without trials. Saddam Hussein personally decided who lived and who died in Iraq. Even in democracies, secret operations, they remove threats outside of legal boundaries. Justice in the hands of a ruler, it is a weapon rather than a moral principle. Using military force to maintain power, it is a necessity. Leaders who rely solely on speeches eventually fall. Machiavelli said that a prince must have both arms and laws. But if one must be sacrificed, laws are less important compared to armies. China used military force in Tiananmen Square in 1989 to crush protests. The Soviet Union sent tanks to Hungary in 1956 and to Czechoslovakia in 1968 to suppress uprisings. Dictators who hesitate to use force, they are replaced by those who will. Creating followers of the ruler's resume ensures loyalty across generations. Hitler's youth programs trained children to serve the Nazi state. Stalin promoted loyalty to communism through propaganda in schools. Mao Zedong created the Red Guard, which followed him blindly. These leaders understood that true power does not just control the present but shapes the future. Cultivating the cult of the leader, it turns a ruler into a godlike figure. The people do not just obey, they worship him. In North Korea, image of Kim Jong-un, they are placed everywhere. And citizens must bow to his portraits. Stalin's face was on posters, statues, and coins. Mussolini's speeches, they were broadcast daily, making him a constant presence in Italian life. When people believe their leader is chosen by fate, they will never rebel. Oppressing public opinion, it prevents the growth of opposition. Machiavelli advised rulers to ensure that no voice of dissent could grow strong. Stalin banned free speech. Hitler controlled the press, and China today censors the internet. A leader cannot allow people to question his rule. Changing the true meaning of force is a tool of control. In 1984, George Orwell, he described how authoritarian rulers use language to reshape reality. Dictators, they have always done this. Stalin called forced labor camps re-education centers. Hitler named the mass killings of Jews the final solution. Modern governments use terms like enhanced interrogation instead of torture. Words shape thought, and thought shape action. Teaching people the history of one's own rules, it ensures a leader's legacy. Napoleon rewrote history to make himself a hero. Stalin removed Trotsky from photographs to erase him from history. In China, school books glorify the Communist Party school. Leaders who control history control the future. Capturing one's name everywhere, it ensures immortality. Stalin renamed cities after himself. Saddam Hussein had his face printed on every banknote. Leaders who spread their names, they ensure that even in death, they remain symbols of power. Benito Mussolini, he ruled Italy with an identity, following many of the political strategies that Machiavelli recommended in The Prince. Machiavelli believed that a ruler should be cunning like a fox and strong like a lion. Mussolini demonstrated both. Mussolini demonstrated both qualities throughout his rise to power and rule. Like a fox and like a lion. He understood that power was not given but taken. And he used force, deception and strategic alliances to achieve his goals. In 1922, he led the famous March on Rome, where thousands of his black shirt supporters, they pressured King Victor Emmanuel III to appoint him as a prime minister. He did not wait for power to come naturally. He seized the moment, just as Machiavelli advised. Machiavelli emphasized that a ruler should not rely on others, but should build his own strength. Mussolini did exactly that. He did not trust Italy's weak democratic system, and instead he dismantled the system step by step. By 1925, he declared himself the leader, transforming Italy into dictatorship. He controlled the press, eliminated opposition, and used propaganda to shape public opinion. Machiavelli warned that rulers should not depend on the love of their people, but should instead make them fear him if necessary. Mussolini understood this principle very well. He crushed dissent using secret police, censorship, and violence. Anyone who opposed him either disappeared or was exiled. Machiavelli also recommended that a ruler should maintain the appearance of morality while being ruthless when needed. Mussolini mastered this tactic. He presented himself as a patriotic leader who would restore Italy's former glory, but behind the scenes, he made deals with criminals and used brutal methods to silence enemies. He knew how to manipulate emotions using powerful speeches and grand promises to make people believe in his vision. He revived Roman symbols. He spread the idea of a new Italian empire and convinced people that he alone could make Italy strong. War and military power, they were central to Machiavelli's philosophy. Mussolini followed these by aggressively expanding Italy's influence. In 1935, he invaded Ethiopia using chemical weapons and massive military force, ignoring international criticism. He wanted to show that Italy was a great power, just as Machiavelli advised. In 1939, he invaded Albania, proving his willingness to use military strength to gain control. Machiavelli had warned that mercenaries and outside forces, they were unreliable. So Mussolini built a strong army to carry out his ambitions. However, he miscalculated his country's strength when he joined World War II in 1940, thinking it would bring him more power. Instead, it led to his downfall. Machiavelli believed that fortune favors the bold, but warned that luck alone cannot sustain power. Mussolini was bold, but he ignored the limitations of his own country. His decision to align with Hitler and and enter World War II, it backfired. Italy was not prepared for a prolonged war, and by 1943, his own people turned against him. He was removed from power and he was arrested. Though he tried to escape with German help, he was captured and he was executed in 1945. Now let's talk about Napoleon Bonaparte. He followed many of Machiavelli's recommendations from the book Prince, as he rose from an ordinary soldier to Emperor of France. He understood power, he understood ambition, and he understood strategy better than most leaders of his time. He used force, he used deception, and he used intelligence to shape history, just as Machiavelli advised rulers to do. He knew that fortune favors the bold, but he also believed in creating his own destiny through careful planning and ruthless decision making. He did not wait for opportunities. He seized the opportunity. In 1799, he staged a coup and overthrew the weak French government directly. He knew that the people were tired of instability and chaos after the French Revolution. Machiavelli advised rulers to take advantage of crisis, and Napoleon exactly did that. He presented himself as a leader who could restore order, and within a year, he became the first consul of France. By 1804, he crowned himself as emperor, showing that he did not need the Pope or anyone else to legitimize his power. Machiavelli had warned rulers never to depend on others for their authority, and Napoleon followed this advice perfectly. Machiavelli believed that a ruler must balance fear and love, but should always prioritize being feared if necessary. Napoleon was loved by his soldiers. But he made sure they also feared disobedience. He maintained strict discipline in his army, and those who failed to follow orders, they faced severe punishment. This made his military one of the strongest in history. He built the Grand Army, which at its peak in 1812 had over 600,000 soldiers. He used this army to dominate Europe, winning key battles like Australia in 1805 and China in 1806. He conquered vast territories and controlled most of Europe by 1810. Machiavelli also recommended that a ruler should not rely on mercenaries or auxiliary forces because they are unreliable. Napoleon followed this advice by building a national army that was loyal only to him. He introduced conscription, making every Frenchman a potential soldier. His strategy worked and he became nearly unstoppable for a decade. He changed European warfare with his speed, with his surprise attacks, with his ability to outmaneuver larger armies. Machiavelli advised rulers to control information and shape public opinion. Napoleon mastered propaganda. He controlled newspapers, ensured that only his victories were publicized, and he created an image of himself as a savior of France. He commissioned paintings and statues that portrayed him as a heroic figure. He knew that perception was as important as reality. Machiavelli warned that rulers must respect their people's traditions and beliefs to avoid rebellion. Napoleon understood this and he implemented legal reforms to gain support. In 1804, he introduced the Napoleonic Code, a new legal system that provided equality before the law, religious freedom, and the protection of property. This made him popular among ordinary citizens and ensured stability in France. He knew that even an autocrat must offer benefits to maintain control. However, Machiavelli also warned rulers not to overstretch their power. Not to overstretch their power. Napoleon ignored this advice. In 1812, he invaded Russia with his massive army, believing he could crush the Russian Empire. But he underestimated the harsh winter and the Russian tactics of scorched earth, where they destroyed their own land to deprive his troops of resources. By the time he retreated his army, they had lost more than 400,000 soldiers. This was a turning point in his downfall. In 1814, after facing defeats from a coalition of European powers, he was forced to abdicate and he was exiled to Elba. But he was not ready to accept defeat. In 1815, he escaped. He returned to France and regained power in what became known as the 100 Days. The people and army welcomed him back, showing that his leadership still inspired loyalty. However, at the Battle of Waterloo in June 1815, he suffered a final defeat. He was captured and exiled to Saint Helena, where he spent his remaining years until his death in 1821. Napoleon's life proved many of Machiavelli's ideas about leadership and power. He rose through intelligence and military strength, controlled public perception, ruled with both fear and admiration, and he created a lasting reforms. But he also ignored Machiavelli's warnings about overextending power. Overextending power leads to his downfall. It's led to his downfall. His story is a lesson in ambition, strategy, and the fine line between success and failure. Power has never been about fairness or justice. It is about control, it is about strategy, and it is about ability to influence minds. Mussolini and Napoleon, they mastered these principles to rise and rule. They knew that people follow strong leaders, not virtuous ones. Today, the same tactics are at work across the world. Politicians, they manipulate emotions, they spread the selective truths, and they maintain dominance through calculated moves. The world may have changed, but the rulers of power, they remain the same. Those who understand them, they rise. Those who ignore them, they are forgotten. Machiavelli's wisdom, it continues to shape history, proving that in politics, survival is the only true measure of success. Thank you.